Hi, this is Chris. This video is called What is Project Governance from the Project Management Guide. In this video, I'm going to talk about project governance, and we're going to talk about what the purpose of project governance is, what its main components are, and then in a moment, I'm going to talk about some of the key governance processes and the frameworks that we can implement on our projects to make our projects run more smoothly. And I'm going to come from it very much from a practical point of view so that it's easy for you to set this up on your own projects. So what is project governance then? So the project manager will typically set up the governance function with the sponsor at the start of the project, and they'll agree what the governance function is going to look like. And effectively, it's a framework that represents the business viewpoint on the project. So it sits there between the business strategy on the one hand and the project on the other. So what it's doing is it's really ensuring that the project is going to deliver the business value that was agreed at the start of the project and also during the project. And it's to make sure that the project doesn't wander off into a direction that the business doesn't really want it to, or that wasn't agreed at the start. And that means that the project manager is left, they report into the project governance function, and they're there to manage the delivery of the project in its own right. So the project governance has three main functions really. So the first one is to sort of set the strategic direction. So in the first instance, it agrees what the strategic direction for the project is going to be. And then during the project, it ensures that the project is still aligned with what the business strategy is. So the second function of project governance is to make decisions in the project. So sometimes there are decisions which are outside the remit of the project manager or the project team, and those can include things like change to scope, or changes to budget, or changes to deliverables or outcomes, or all sorts of different changes. So, and sometimes the projects might need help as well. So it's an opportunity for the project governance function to make decisions that affect or impact the project. Then the third function of the project governance is to offer oversight, to keep an oversight of the project, to make sure that the project is delivering against the agreed project objectives and the business case, and to make sure that it's going to deliver against the agreed criteria and the outcomes are going to be what was agreed at the start of the project. So let's take a look at some of the typical project governance that we would set up for our project. The first function we're going to set up is the project board, or sometimes called the project steering group as well. So, and this is a group of people that represent different stakeholders or different parts of the project. So this is certainly going to have the project sponsor on it, or the person that's paying for the project, or the customer. And I've done a separate video on who the sponsor is and what they do. And then you're going to have various representatives of the users, the user representatives of the business areas impacted by the project. You might have a supplier rep on the project on that project board as well. That does sometimes happen. And normally these are senior people in your organisation. And typically when you're setting up the project board, you really want to be having somewhere between 4 to 6 people on your project steering board to in order that you can manage it and run it effectively. So at the start of the project, the project board set the strategic direction, they agree the objectives and the scope of the project, and then during the project they oversee it to make sure that it's on track. And of course they make some of the key decisions, they approve changes on the project, and they're really there as well to provide insight on the best way sometimes to tackle certain things or tackle certain approaches that you might have, or certain questions that you have on how to approach certain things on the project. So they're really important for that. They're there also to provide support to make sure that the project can run smoothly, so that they can talk with their business operations people or whoever it is in their organisation to help you to make sure that the project is gonna run smoothly. So they can definitely open doors for you and help things run smoothly. It's important to point out that the project manager, technically, they're not part of the project board, although most often they will chair the board, and they certainly will be putting all the information together, whether it's a slide deck or whatever, a paper or whatever it is for the project board. And it's a meeting. I should have said it's a meeting that will meet typically once a month, and where you will run through a summary of what the project is doing. And I've got another video where I drop into quite a lot more detail on what the project board is. So the second key function that you need to have on your project is an active project sponsor. And I've done a whole separate video on that, but the project sponsor is the customer, and they're there to make the key decisions or the day-to-day decisions on the project. And the project manager will really be working closely with the sponsor, and they'll really be meeting with them as often as possible. And they're there to keep the project manager accountable and make sure that they're delivering everything that's been agreed on the project. And on really small projects, actually, you might only have a project sponsor, so it might be such a small project that there won't be really a need to set up a project board, so they will actually represent the project board themselves in actual fact. So I mean, there's no point in setting a project board up if the project sponsor is entirely responsible for everything, basically. So they're really key members. So they're really keen, really important to have a good active project sponsor on your project. But it is worth doing even if you're not going to have a project board in terms of a large a group of people, then it is worth actually having a project board periodically once a month, so writing something down formally, so you've got some sort of audit process and some sort of tracking process there as well. Moving on to the third governance function then. So we really want to be clear about what our roles and responsibilities are on the project, and we need to write those down. So we need to write down who the project sponsor is, obviously, and what their role is going to be in the project. We need to write down what the project board members are and what they are, their function on the project as well. And it's important, as I said, that you write all of this down. And typically you're going to write this down in the project plan document, or the project proposal, or the project initiation document, or whatever that document is called in your organisation that sets out how you're going to run the project during the initiation phase of the project. And it sets out who is going to make what decisions, and also make sure that if it's all written down, it makes sure that there are no gaps in the governance as well. So if there are bits of the organisation that aren't quite covered, then once it's written down, then hopefully that should identify where there are gaps in governance that need to be filled. And finally, the fourth governance function that we need to put in place is some sort of stage gating process on our project. So we need a set of project review milestones at key stages of the project, and these set out a set of criteria that have to be passed before we can meet the gate and pass the gate, basically. So it's important also that we could stop the project if we want to. So if the criteria aren't met, then the project board and the sponsor, they have the power to stop the project there and then, or certainly stop it, reassess it, and work out what is the best way forward with the project. And we can see these as quality gates that are put in at various stages throughout the project. And obviously it's really important that we document these criteria in the project plan document, or whatever that document's called in your organisation. Okay, so that was a quick overview of project governance, and I hope you can see that I've tried to give you some really practical, take a real practical viewpoint on how to set up project governance. And it's really important that the reason why we have the project governance is to maintain transparency on the project and accountability. It really does actually help the project manager to have really strong governance in place, and it makes sure that the business and the project are still very much aligned, or I should say that the project is still very much aligned with what the business strategy is. So it's up to the project governance function to make sure that the project is very much on track and meeting its strategic objectives that are aligned with the business. So in the next video, I'm going to drop into a bit more detail about the project board. Thanks very much for watching the video. Please subscribe by clicking on the button below. I'll be really interested to hear what your comments are on project governance and any of the challenges you're having setting it up, or feel free to ask me some questions below. And if you want to find out more information, you can find us at theprojectmanagementguide.com. I'll see you in the next video.